guaranteeing its own security. But you saw those two leaders there side by side smiling. President Trump answering some questions from the reporters in the room, saying that he believes that Ukraine is getting closer with the U.S. on a deal to share its rare earth mineral resources as well as other key resources. Now, we had learned from Ukrainian officials that the first proposal that the U.S. had presented to the Ukrainians included Ukraine sharing 50% of the revenue from its critical resources without guaranteeing its security. So it's unclear now what this new deal looks like, but President Trump there sounding confident, saying that he believes Zelensky could be coming to the White House soon in the next week or so to actually sign that deal in person. Now, President Trump, he was also asked what he would say to those in Europe, critics who say that he's abandoning Ukraine. And President Trump said this, he said, quote, "Europe is going to make sure that nothing happens. I don't think it's going to be much of a problem." He said that several times, where he doesn't believe it's going to be a problem and that Russia is going to get back to its business. But of course, Kira, big concerns from our European allies that a deal is going to be reached that is more favorable to Russia and that will not secure long-term peace and security for Ukraine.
Well, Selena, what's the word among leaders out there about how they feel about Zelensky now talking about stepping down?
Well, look, I think the key here is that Zelensky wants what is going to lead to lasting peace for his country. And Trump has made it very clear that he doesn't have the most favorable views towards Zelensky. So Zelensky is saying that he's willing to do what's necessary to bring this war to an end. But there has been a really seismic shift, and Trump's recent rhetoric when it comes to Russia has really sent shockwaves. It has shocked many of these European leaders to their core. Trump saying that he's falsely blaming Ukraine for starting the war and falsely calling Zelensky a dictator.
Let's go back and listen in to more Q&A. Selena.
Various countries, and you're talking about Europe, and you're talking about Ukraine as part of that whole situation. The other side has a lot of support also. So let's see how it all works out. It might work out. Look, you can never make up lives. The one thing you can make up the money, but you can't make up the lives. A lot of lives lost. I think probably a lot more lives than people are talking about. It's been a rough war, but I think we're close to getting it solved. Go ahead.
Do you think that DOGE could benefit from more streamlined communications? There was that email telling employees to give 5 things that they've done last week. Agency heads then told people to ignore it.
You're talking about the last email that was sent, where he wanted to know what you did this week. You know why he wanted that, by the way? I thought it was great, because we have people that don't show up to work and nobody even knows if they work for the government. So by asking the question, tell us what you did this week, what he's doing is saying, are you actually working? And then if you don't answer, like you're sort of semi-fired or you're fired, because a lot of people are not answering because they don't even exist. They're trying to, that's how badly various parts of our government were run by, and especially by this last group. So what they're doing is they're trying to find out who's working for the government. Are we paying other people that aren't working? And where is all this? Where's the money going? We have found hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud so far, and we've just started. We're actually going to Fort Knox to see if the gold is there, because maybe somebody stole the gold. Tons of gold. So I think it was actually, there was a lot of genius in sending it. We're trying to find out if people are working. And so we're sending a letter to people, please tell us what you did last week. If people don't respond, it's very possible that there is no such person or they're not working.
Some of the agency heads instructed their employees not to respond. They were waiting on further guidance, but Elon Musk's tweet said a failure to respond would be taken as a resignation. So there's been a disconnect in communications.
Yeah.
Are you concerned at all about
that?
No.
That was done in a friendly manner. Only things such as perhaps Marco at State Department, where they have very confidential things, or the FBI, where they're working on confidential things. And they don't mean that in any way combatively with Elon. They're just saying there are some people that you don't want to really have them tell you what they're working on last week. But other than that, I think everyone thought it was a pretty ingenious idea. We have to find out where these people are. Who are they? And we said, if you don't respond, we assume you're not around.
And that holds, that stands.
And you're not getting paid anymore. Massively popular, what we're doing.
Mr. President, do you still believe in NATO? in the alliance between Europe and America in NATO? Are you going to go to the
NATO
summit in
is
June?
very much involved in this. When I first got elected at the very beginning, first term, I got hundreds of billions of dollars put into NATO. NATO had no money because they hadn't paid for years. And I said, look, if you don't pay, and we're not going to be a part of NATO, we're not going to protect, we're not going to do what we're supposed to do. And we took in hundreds of billions of dollars into NATO. No, NATO is a good thing if it's done properly and if it's used properly.
Mr. President, in these days you speak a lot about tariff in Canada, in Mexico, and in Europe. I want to know what is your idea about Italy, if you want to make the same thing.
What? Can you talk up a little bit?
In these days.
No, louder. Can you talk a little louder? You have a beautiful voice, but you're not.
In these days you speak.
Where are you from?
Italy.
From Italy. Oh, I love Italy. Go ahead.
I want to know if you have the same idea with Italy about tariffs.
Well, look, I love Italy, and Italy is a very important nation. We have a wonderful woman as your leader, and she was on the conversation today, one that we had, the G7. And no, I think Italy is doing very well. I think Italy's got very strong leadership with Georgia.
Monsieur le Président, qu'est-ce que vous répondez au président Trump qui a dit que les Français et les Britanniques n'avaient pas
Any other questions?
la guerre en Ukraine?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you clarify what you meant in your truth today on the major economic development transactions between the U.S. and Russia? Any more detail?
With respect to what, Russia?
In solving the peace deal, you said there will be major economic development transactions which will take place between the United States and Russia.
Yeah, we're trying to do some economic development deals. They have a lot of things that we want, and we'll see. I mean, I don't know if that will come to fruition, but we'd love to be able to do that if we could. You know, they have massive rare earth. It's a very large, it's actually the largest in terms of land. It's by far the largest country. And they have very valuable things that we could use, and we have things that they could use, and it would be very good if we could do that. I think it would be a very good thing for world peace and lasting peace. Well, I mean, our first, by far, our first thing that we want to do, the first element of the overall transaction is ending the war. But if, just as we're doing with Ukraine, if we could do some economic development in terms of Russia and getting things that we want, something like that would be possible, yes.
Mr. President, Mr. President.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Can you explain the rationale in having the U.S. vote against the UN resolutions that Ukraine proposed and also the U.S. proposed?
I would rather not explain it now, but it's sort of self-evident, I think.
Mr. President, first, what about increasing the tariffs on products from the European Union? Is that still something you want to do today?
Well, it's not increasing, it's reciprocal. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them. So it's not a question of increasing. If they charge us 20%, we charge them 20%. If they charge us 30 or 40%, then we do that too. So that would be on European Union, but that really would be with respect to everybody. It's reciprocity. So reciprocal. Whatever they charge us, we charge them. Nobody has a problem. Even you, I see you don't have a problem. Right?
Mr. President, are you thinking of going to Moscow soon, maybe in May for the 9th of May for the anniversary?
I mean, not soon, but I would be certainly, if this all gets settled out, which I think it will, sure, I would go there.
On the 9th of
and
May?
you'd come here too.
On the 9th of May on the Red Square?
I don't know the 9th of May, no. I think that's pretty soon. But no, at the appropriate time, I would go to Moscow.
When do you think the war will end?
I think we're working it soon.
How soon?
Within weeks.
Weeks?
Yeah.
At what price for
Do
Ukraine?
you think so? I'd like to ask that you. I think we could end it within weeks if we're smart. If we're not smart, it'll keep going, and we'll keep losing young, beautiful people that shouldn't be dying. And we don't want that. And remember what I said. This could escalate into a third world war. And we don't want that either.
Mr. President, your envoy Steve Witkoff suggested a temporary ceasefire in the conflict, but the Russian government has denied that out of hand. Do you worry that they're not dealing in good faith?
No, I think they, at some point, will agree to that. I think they probably wanted to. And I think once you have a ceasefire, it's going to end. because they're not going from a ceasefire back to war. I think people have had their full. I'm just glad I was able to help, because there was no communication with Russia until I came along. Biden didn't communicate. He couldn't communicate with his own child. So Biden didn't communicate. He couldn't. It was terrible. He hadn't spoken to Putin in 3 years. You're trying to end a war. People are being killed. Every week, thousands of people are being killed. Soldiers, in this case, mostly. Also towns, as missiles go in and back and forth. No, it's a shame. This should have never happened. This is a very sad, this is going to go down to the history books. This is a very sad moment, because that should have been stopped. That should have never started. And if it did start, it should have stopped the first week, not 3 years later. Okay?
Je vais répondre sur Hollande, juste, je pense que plusieurs questions de votre collègue qui ont été posées en français et qui rejoignent les questions posées par les collègues américains. D'abord, cette discussion est utile et construire la paix est une nécessité. La deuxième chose, c'est qu'il y a aujourd'hui une capacité de dissuasion qui est restaurée et que c'est ce que veut dire le président Trump quand il vient.
All right, let's bring back our senior White House correspondent, Selena Wang. As the French continues, our discussion will continue. Two things, I guess. Just right there, Trump, I'll get to the emails in just a second that Musk sent out to federal employees. But Trump right there saying, I can end this war in a couple of weeks. Also saying he's planning on visiting Moscow.
Yeah, he said he would be visiting Moscow at the appropriate time to visit with Vladimir Putin. And remember, Kira, his vow on the campaign trail was that he would be able to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. Of course, that didn't happen. He has now been a month in this second term of presidency, and now he's saying that it could end in a matter of weeks, quote, if we're smart about it. Now, he also there, Kira, notably was defending his strategy in terms of reaching out to Putin, speaking with Putin, as many European allies, including Macron, are concerned that Trump is now viewing this war more through the eyes of Putin than he is through Ukraine and the Europeans. But he's essentially defending his positioning, saying that you have to reach out to Russia to end this war and that it has dragged out for far too long. And his strategy is the only way to bring it to a close.
All right. Trump also finally addressing those emails sent to federal workers, instigated by Elon Musk, by the way, about, hey, tell us what you did last week and send us 5 bullet points. Are we getting any more clarity to this?
Well, look, the president was noticeably very silent over the weekend as all of this chaos was unfolding and spreading after Elon Musk put out that initial tweet. But you heard the president there addressing it, saying that he thought it was a, quote, ingenious idea, saying that this is a way to root out people who aren't being efficient in the government and a way to cut the fat, essentially. And he was also pressed on if agency heads, some of them Trump appointed, who told their staff not to respond to this email. He was also asked if they were pushing back against Elon Musk. Trump said that they aren't being combative towards Elon, but he didn't address the multitude of agencies that have told their staff to put pause on those emails, including the FBI, the State Department, the Department of Defense, as well as several other agencies. So still not a lot of clarity here. But what we know is that Trump over the weekend asked Elon Musk to get more aggressive in his cost-cutting campaign. Then just hours after that, Elon had put out that tweet saying that if you don't respond to this message to detail what you've accomplished in the last week, then you can consider yourself to be terminated. Those actual emails that went out to staffers, though, Kira, they didn't have that threat in it. So you can imagine federal employees have been deeply concerned about what to do, who to listen to, and what exactly is going to happen to their futures if they respond or don't respond to these emails.
Got it. Looks like we've got about 5 more minutes of questions here. Selena, let's continue to listen in.
Include troops, but they would be there to maintain peace. They would not be along the front lines. They would not be part of any conflict. They would be there to ensure that the peace is respected. Our assistance may include other capacity building, perhaps for the military. We see U.S. credibility here. We each have our role to play, but it will be done in a united fashion.
Mr. President, do you think that Ukraine should give up a part of its territory?
Well, we're going to see. It's a negotiation that's just starting, and they've been fighting, and there's been a lot of land that's been taken. So we'll have to see how that works out. That's part of the negotiation. I will say there was great unity in that room today, via Skype or whatever. But it was great tremendous unity today in that room with the other countries.
Ukraine wants those territories back. Can they take it back? What they lost in the past years?
That's not an easy thing to do, is it? Right? It's not an easy. Just asking whether or not you can take back the land that they lost. And I say that, yeah, perhaps some of it, yeah, I hope so. But that's not an easy thing to do.
But not everything.
It's going to be something we're talking about.
Will you convince Vladimir Putin to accept the European troops as peacekeeper, will you think?
Yeah, he will accept that.
He will accept
I've
that?
asked him that question.
You talked to him?
I've asked him that question.
Is
said
France
yes?
going to lift the block on the
Because he's
$300 billion?
not, look, if we do this deal, he's not looking for more war. He doesn't mind, but I've specifically asked him that question. He has no problem with it.
Is France going to lift the block on the $300 billion in frozen Russian assets in Belgium? France has opposed unfreezing it to pay Ukraine and compensate the U.S. for its support. Is France going to lift its opposition to that?
This is, we speak about frozen assets. We already used them to back precisely the loans negotiated at the G7. And it's part of the sanctions, so it will depend on the follow-up of the discussions. But clearly, we respect international law. It's just frozen assets now. You can take the proceeds of the frozen assets, but you cannot take the assets themselves because it's not respecting international law, and we want to respect international law.
How is one different than the other? If you can take the proceeds from it, how can you not take
Because it's very
them?
different. You keep the assets, you take the proceeds because they are paralyzed in a certain way. You take the proceeds during the wartime, but you keep the assets, and it's part of the negotiation at the end of the war. Because, this war costed all of us a lot of money. And this is the responsibility of Russia, because the aggressor is Russia.
Should the US be compensated?
So at the end of the day, this frozen asset should be part of the negotiation. All in all.
Will France support the U.S. being compensated?
I support the idea to have Ukraine first being compensated, because they are the ones who have lose a lot of their fellow citizens and being destroyed by this attack. Second, all of those who paid for to be compensated, but not by Ukraine, by Russia, because they were the one to aggress.
Again, just so you understand, Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid 60% of the total efforts, and it was through, like the US, loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money. To be clear, we have 230 billion frozen assets in Europe, Russian assets, but this is not as a collateral of a loan because this is not our belonging. So they are frozen. If at the end of the day, in the negotiation we will have with Russia, they're ready to give it to us, super. It will be loan at the end of the day, and Russia will have paid for that.
If you believe that, it's okay with me.
Mr. President,
If they get their money back, we don't, and now we do. But that's
We will
only
fight
fair.
both.
Mr. President, should we more money they to the one that pays everybody back? Are they the aggressor?
Well, we're negotiating everything, and everything's on the table, and we'll see if we can get some land back, and we'll see about a lot of different things. And we're going to be making a little speech and say a few words in a little while. We're going to have another meeting, a luncheon meeting, and we'll see you in about 2 hours. Okay? Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Fred. Moving out. Moving out, Cameron. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Selena, that was an interesting moment. Very rarely do you see a world leader kind of stop Trump. You saw Macron actually put his hand on Trump. Like, oh, wait a minute. Let's clarify what we're talking about here when it comes to money to Ukraine, if Ukraine will have to pay back money. And Trump sat back and let Macron have that moment. You do not ever see that.
And it kind of speaks to this extraordinary moment we're in, Kira, where there's a lot of uncertainty with these Europeans when it comes to this relationship they have with President Trump, as they have seen the president of the United States repeat falsehoods when it comes to the war in Ukraine. We've talked about how he had called Zelensky a dictator, that he had falsely blamed Zelensky for this war beginning in the first place. But you heard the president there in the room try and defend his strategy for why he's been reaching out to Putin, why he believes it was a mistake that President Biden had isolated the Russian leader. He said a number of newsmaking things. He said that he believes he can end the war in a matter of weeks. He said that he wants to visit Moscow when the timing is appropriate. He also said that they're close with Ukraine on reaching that minerals resource deal. So the original proposal was for Ukraine to give 50% of the revenue from its rare earth minerals, as well as other key resources, give it to the U.S. as a way to pay back America for sending billions of dollars to help support Ukraine in the war effort. Now, that original proposal did not include security guarantees. And when the president was asked whether or not this final deal they're trying to reach would include security guarantees, the president said he put it on Europe, essentially saying that Europe is going to ensure that nothing happens. And this all comes, Keir, as we've been talking about this seismic shift in U.S.-European relations, with the incoming chancellor of Germany essentially saying Europe has got to move on from the U.S., learn how to survive and guarantee our own security without the unpredictability coming from America.
All right, Selena Wang, thank you. All right, coming up, prayers for the pontiff. A service in St. Peter's Square for Pope Francis will take you there. Plus, a bomb threat sends fighter jets scrambling. The mid-air photos from the passenger plane right after the break.
Marshall's buyers have a very particular set of skills. They can hunt down the latest trends.
Double denim is back. So chic.
And take quality very, very seriously.
Ceramic.
They're highly trained deal-making professionals who travel far and wide to hustle the best of the best for you. We get the deals. You get the good stuff. Marshall's.
A real meal deserves a real dessert, like the DQ $7 meal deal. With a cheeseburger or 3-piece chicken strips, full-size fries, a drink, and a sundae. You get an honest-to-goodness full meal, all for just $7 at DQ.
I'd never seen that many skeletal remains. Thousands.
This killer, he's the Dahmer you've never heard of.
There were mannequins, almost like it was a club.
I felt the presence of evil.
Never before a face-to-face interview with a camera.
Why now?
Let me ask you, am I the evil culprit, the accomplice? I'd like to know how the audience views me.
The Fox Hollow Murders, Playground of a Serial Killer, only on Hulu.
My moderate to severe Crohn's symptoms kept me out of the picture. With Skyrizi, feel symptom relief at 4 weeks. Many people were in remission at 12 weeks, at 1 year, and even at 3 years.
Don't use if allergic. Serious allergic reactions, increased infections, or lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and TB. Tell your doctor about any flu-like symptoms or vaccines. Liver problems leading to hospitalization may occur when treated for Crohn's.
Control is everything. Ask your gastroenterologist about Skyrizi.
Everyone is chasing the feeling of a win.
From Pixar, no matter what happens, you are all winners. Comes one story, told from 8 sides.
Better not blow it.
Disney Pixar's Win or Lose, now available.
The faithful flocking to Vatican City as fear over the Holy Father's health now spreads across the world. Pope Francis